Podium mic 1, podium mic 2. Good morning. I'm Reverend Joanna. Welcome home. Unitarian Universalism is unambiguously, unapologetically progressive. This church affirms the inherent worth and dignity of all people through anti-racism, anti-oppression, supporting the LGBTQIA+ community, working for reproductive justice, voting rights, and other issues as needed. We seek to build beloved community not only here, but out from without our walls, out into the wider community. And we bring a spirit of joy to it all. It is so good to be here together this morning. Would you please rise either in body or in spirit for our opening hymn, There Is More Love.
Welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Alyssa, and one thing I love about Live Oak is being part of the choir. I'd like to welcome, it's really fun, you should come. I'd like to welcome any guests we have today. If this is your first time here, please stop by the visitors table so we can meet you and answer any questions you might have. As part of our mission, we want to enhance the connections between each of us and also with the outside world. You can stay connected with everything happening at Live Oak through our weekly email newsletter. There's a link on our homepage or our Facebook pages. During the worship service, no need to put your phone away. We would like you to silence it. I'll wait. We encourage you to post on social media things you hear today, maybe even an invitation for a friend to join you next week. Today, our chalice at Live Oak is being lit by Bryn, no Henley, Goss. And now here and at home, let us light our chalices with these words from the poet Susie Kasem. Love is not a word or a thought. It is the name for an action that breathes from its light. What do you do in love's name? And it is only done outside, in the light, or with an inner flame illuminating love's true name. I want to know, are your actions done by remote or with soul? And when you say you love someone, does a light go off inside it all? What have you done in the name of love? Because really, I want to know. This is a congregation bound not by creed, but by covenant. May those in agreement affirm this covenant now. We affirm a caring community of and for all ages, seeking wisdom, doing service, and living with integrity. Our covenant holds us in unity as we celebrate our shared spiritual journey.
A special part of Unitarian Universalist Sunday services is our time of sharing joys and sorrows. I think of it as the time where we keep vigil for one another, when we give one another the gift of being present to those among us who have had some special milestone in their own personal lives, or some particular joy or sorrow that it's important for the congregation to know. And today, Alyssa shares her joy in having Henley's girlfriend, Kara, at church today. Jenna shares the concern that Emerson isn't sleeping at night and we all need sleep. Daria shares very happy to share. She released a music video for her latest song, I'd Rather Lose You, and it's been making the rounds, and it is made with love, and you can find it on YouTube. Yes. Is it okay if we post a link? Okay. And Bill Dower shares, thankful for all the infrastructure workers, public and private, who repaired the ice storm damage, and then also a personal sadness that they may be at the end of life for one of their dogs. Often, what is also heavy on our hearts are our own fears that we have fallen short. We know that we have left undone those things which we ought to have done, and we have done those things which we ought not to have done. May we have the courage to be honest with ourselves, the willingness to make amends, and the compassion to accept forgiveness from others and from ourselves, trusting in the assurance that imperfection is expected and love is the guiding and healing force with which we can align our lives. So for our time of wonder today, I'm going to need some volunteers, but it needs to be volunteers that are comfortable holding hands with others. I do have some hand sanitizer here for afterwards. So are there any volunteers I can get? I'm going to need a bunch, so just come on up. Okay, so have y'all ever seen one of these before? Okay, well, then I'm going to start with you. This is really cool. So I'm going to hold this end, and you hold that end. Nothing's happening, right? But let's complete it now. Would you hold my other hand? Well, here, first start with me. Would you hold my... Oh my God. Okay, but now let's get Rin in. Okay, but we got to complete the circuit. Okay, let's get someone else in. Okay, but got to complete. Okay. Okay, so it's doing that with 4 of us. Do you think it'll still work with 5?
Yes.
Okay, let's give it a try. Oh, look at that. Okay, what about 6? Okay. Okay, what about 7? It's working. I bet we have some scientists here. Yeah, we're like wires, exactly, and we're conducting it. Now, if I let go, it opens the circuit, and the energy is no longer flowing, right? Very nice. I think, I don't think we could do it right now, but I think that if every single person in here were able to hold hands, it would still flow through all of us. We can just keep adding more and more and more people. Thank you, and you can go sit down. I appreciate your help. Isn't that amazing? And this is how love flows through a community. And what was interesting about it, if you were paying attention, is that whether there is no like giving or receiving, like that's not clear. It's simply being a part of it, and it flows through us all. There are things that can block this, right? We saw it. If I let go, then it can stop. Conflict, we should not be conflict averse, but it is important to stay connected. That is how we continue to have love flowing through this community. And the more people we add, the more it flows. And when you have that kind of power, we know this, right, with electricity. Like, it's amazing, the power of electricity, we take it for granted, right? And for some of us who are not scientists, it's just kind of magic. But it can do powerful things. It allows us to live the lives that we want to live. And I would say it's the same thing for love in a community. That when we have all of this love flowing through the community, and it flows through our relationships, it flows through service when we are doing things together, it flows through mission when we are all going out and protesting or feeding our hungry neighbors. That's all adding to the flow of love through this faith community. So we're going to talk more about that in the sermon, but I'll leave you to think about where you are in a cycle of love flowing through this community or any community that you're a part of.
And now, would you please rise in body or in spirit for hymn number 124, Be That Guide. Sometimes you volunteer too much. Love as a Common Theological Core, UUA Board of Trustees, January 2021. What is it that lies behind all the statements of principles that we agree to as our common associational points of covenant? In the 2005 Commission on Appraisal report, it cites Robert Miller's study on Unitarian Universalists, stating UUs ranked loving as an instrumental value and mature love as a terminal value more highly than did respondents from other groups, religious and non-religious. UUs were more likely, even before 2005, to assert the importance of love than any other group, religious or non-religious. And this was before the campaign known as Side with Love began. Since that time, we have seen and heard expressions of love and displays of love in action by UUs. We assert that our deepest common theological grounding and value is this: love. We find it peeking through the words of the currently existing principles. We see it in our insistence on the worth and dignity of every person. We see it in the call for demanding and embodying justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We hear it in our urging of acceptance of one another and our support for each person's spiritual growth. We discern an accountable love in our call for a responsible search for truth and meaning. Our affirmation of the right of conscience and the right of every individual to participate in shaping those institutions that govern them displays a deep respect and love for every person. We hold up the goal of a peaceful, free, and just world community as an expression of what love can and should bring into being. And we believe that our call to respect the interdependent web that we are a part of is an articulation of love for all that is and our own place and role in that web. We see love called out as what demands that we be active in our justice work and justice making. We note that our hymnals contain many assertions of what we aspire to and what love can do and be. Let us build a home where love can dwell. Love will guide us, and we are answering the call of love among them. We respond to the call of love because it is our common theological core. It is what can and does motivate us and illuminates our deepest commitments to each other.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. These words, called the Blake Covenant, are spoken at countless Unitarian Universalist churches, including ours, on occasion. And it was written by James Philip Blake in 1894 for the church that he served in Illinois. But I think that for many of us, there is something in those words that evokes something beyond one particular congregation. Even though it says love is the spirit of this church, we relate to it as a way of connecting with Unitarian Universalists across the world. And this is something that is core to who we are. Anyone, I think, who studies human growth and development, pretty quickly it becomes inescapable for them that the first formational, foundational privilege that we get is love. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right. It should be a birthright. It is that it sometimes is not. But when you study human growth and development, you learn that the way that we love a baby, through holding them, comforting them, reading to them, singing to them, mirroring back when they are cooing to us, in other words, love, that is shaping who they will become. That is shaping their brain. Last week, we talked about James Fowler and the 6 stages of faith development, and how there's actually 7 because there is a stage 0. I don't know why they call it that, but it's largely pre-verbal. It's a baby from birth to about age 2. And whatever it is that they are experiencing, that is planting the seeds for how they are going to view life and how they're going to view human nature. And if it is how they will view God, whatever words they use for a force that is larger than themselves. And someone who understood this long before Fowler wrote his book was Martin Luther King Jr. He said, see, he was in seminary, and he had an assignment that he had to do. He had to write a theological autobiography. And in it, he wrote this. He said, "It is quite easy for me to think of a God of love, mainly because I grew up in a family where love was central and where lovely relationships were ever present. It is quite easy for me to think of the universe as basically friendly, mainly because of my uplifting hereditary and environmental circumstances. It is quite easy for me to lean more toward optimism than pessimism about human nature, mainly because of my childhood experiences. It is impossible to get at the roots of one's religious attitudes without taking into account the psychological and historical factors that play upon the individual, so that the above biographical factors are absolutely necessary in understanding my religious development." Love begins shaping who we are from the very beginning. And love has shaped what this faith is, what Unitarian Universalism is, from the very beginning. Back in the early 1800s, when the Unitarians and the Universalists were forming themselves into denominations, because we did not come together until 1961 when we consolidated, but at the very beginning, the impetus for forming themselves into denominations was love. Because both the Unitarians and the Universalists had such a different view of God and religion than did most of the people at the time. In 1819, William Ellery Channing gave this sermon. We've talked about this quite a bit because it was like the foundational sermon defining what Unitarianism was. and explaining that it wasn't just non-Trinitarianism, that was part of it, but that it was part of a commitment to what we would now call a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And even that came out of love, which Channing explained that Unitarians believed, and because they were a Christian denomination at that time, we are now pluralist, but Unitarians believed that God was so loving that he created humans to be able to reason and think for themselves. Even that was connected to love. And he contrasted that to the view of God at that time. The prevalent Calvinist view of God at that time was this God who was punishing and judging and vengeful. And he said, that view of God is one whom we cannot love if we would, and whom we ought not to love if we could. And he explained that for Unitarians, their whole belief about the nature of God was that his unborrowed, underived, and unchangeable love is the only fountain of what flows to us. Not vengeance, not hatred, not judgment, but love. So around the same time, the Universalists were forming themselves into a denomination. With them, it is even more clear how important love was because they were the Universalists, which stood for universal salvation, the idea that the nature of God was love, and as such, no one would be sent to an eternal hell. And so when in 1805, he wrote a book called Treatise on Atonement. And in it, in describing God, he said, he loves because his nature is to love. And he also said this, he said that there was a moral thing, a moral energy that flowed through all of us. And he said, love is the life and happiness of the soul, and hatred, its death and misery. And I want you to just look at those words for a moment. I think they are just as relevant right now. Because I know that so many of us look at people right now, politicians, police, others, people we see on comment boards online, and we say, how can you do that? How can you have you no shame? How can you say these evil things? How can you put a target on trans children's backs? There are so many things, and we can't make sense of it. I really think that what is happening is that hatred damages and destroys the soul. And so many of these things that we are seeing is because their souls don't work anymore. Our souls, the thing that drives us to have moral instincts, it's fed on love. Love is how we strengthen what is inside of us. In the 20th century, we get, yes, I talk about him all the time because he is the most influential Unitarian Universalist theologian of the 20th century, James Luther Adams. So this thing in the Blake Covenant about how love is the spirit of this church and service its law. Service its law. That's what he's talking about here when he says we deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social. And James Luther Adams was in no way pithy. What this means for us is that love is not just a feeling, love is not even just a force, that if we don't do something with it, if we do not incarnate it through our actions, it effectively does not exist. We have to put love out there because we are the hands and the feet and the voices of love. Without us, it is ineffectual. And so service is a way that we do this. In the same way that I had the kids up here and you could see, the energy flowing through. We receive love through service, both in the giving it and the receiving it. And sometimes, in the giving it, we are the ones who may benefit the most. In Unitarian Universalism, and I would say, just as a fact, love is not selfish. Let's talk for just a moment, though, about that word selfish, because I think that it has been so misused, and we often react to that misuse in a way that kind of confirms, and I know I am being completely not clear. Let me explain what I'm talking about. The word selfish has been weaponized, right? The word selfish has been used to apply if we are taking some time for self-care, or if we are drawing boundaries, right? Or if we are just doing something for our enjoyment. And so we respond to that defensively, kind of defiantly, right? And so we often will say something like, I am taking a day, I'm going to be selfish and take a day for some self-care, which means that we're kind of confirming that wrong definition. That's not what selfish means. Selfish is not simply to benefit from something. There's another part that is required, and that is when we ignore or don't care about the impact on someone else, right? It is just fine to eat 3 pieces of pizza. If you like pizza, I highly recommend it. But, yay, pizza, amen. This is where I'm going to get some response from y'all. Pizza. Eating 3 pieces of pizza is fine. But if we are seated at a table, and there are 5 of us there, and there are 5 pieces of pizza, and we take 3, that's selfish. As a woman, to be able to talk about our joy in being a girl, right? And our pride in being a woman, because women are awesome. I was going to say, if y'all applaud for pizza, but not that. But if a cisgender woman says only cisgender women get to have that joy and that pride in being a woman, and only cisgender women get to go into women-only spaces, not transgender women, that's being selfish. Love is not selfish. And so in a UU church, we work to find additional ways to love and additional ways to practice being not selfish. We are a pluralist religion. We pull wisdom from everywhere we can find it. Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Beyonce, Battlestar Galactica. From the Buddhist, we get the concept poly community. We get the term compersion, and this is oriented around non-selfish, around being able to take deep joy in someone else's joy, even when it does not affect us at all. And we do that in so many different aspects of our lives, with our partners, with our friends, and for complete strangers. To me, when, y'all know I love me some social media, to me, social media, one of the gifts that it brings is when we get to see other people experiencing joy, total stranger to us, and we get to feel joy, goodness. Unselfish love is something that we teach in all of our churches. We will often refer to it as talent and treasure, that is how we work in a community. That is what, in fact, makes a community work. But I would add, what that also does is it puts more love. Again, just like that power stick, it puts more love in the community itself. And one of the ways that we also serve, this Blake covenant, right? It says that this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to care for one another. We know that this is part of being in a community. And the more love we put in, the more love rises in the whole community. Even if the care is just happening among a couple of people, you're doing that for the whole community. But I feel like I got to say this. I think that all of us right now are carrying a pretty deep wound from the pandemic. Because we knew how to care for each other. We had been doing it for decades, right? And all of a sudden, we couldn't. I mean, do you remember what that first year? I have to go back and remind myself that first year. Like, I met my best friend. She lives in Houston, I live here. LaGrange is our kind of middle point. And when we met during that first year, and remember, we did not know how this was spread. She and I sat at opposite sides, masked, outside at a big picnic table, and when we said goodbye, we didn't hug. I have never said goodbye to that person and not hugged her. That's where we were. That first year, there were no vaccines. That first year, you can look this up because I bet you have forgotten. It was not confirmed until May of 2021 that this was spread through breath. It was not confirmed until more than a full year had passed. And so we tried to care for each other. I will say this congregation is resilient, and it did so many creative things. Every year when I am putting ornaments on my tree, I'm taking ornaments. We gave out Advent bags that year. We got on Zoom, we did meetings, we did phone calls, we did emails, but it wasn't the same. I would say none of us got what we needed. And one of the things that we needed was to be able to care for each other. And I think it's important to name this and acknowledge this. The head of our Unitarian Universalist Association in about 2020 said this. She said, "Everyone needs more than everyone can give right now." And I think the wound that we are carrying is not about what we didn't receive. It's about what we were not able to give. And I think we need to acknowledge that. I got a question last week because in our joys and sorrows, some of you who grew up in a certain faith tradition may recognize some of the words around we have done what we ought not to have done, and we have left unto have done. So part of that, and by the way, for those who don't know, I change the liturgy every year, so if you don't like it, just hold on till September. If you do like it, enjoy it now. I put those in there. Part of it is a little bit of a nod to our Anglican heritage. Spoiler, I'll be talking about that next month when we talk about Unitarianism 101. But the bigger reason was pastoral. Because I feel that we are all carrying around a wound around all that we could not do. But this is a church where you get to be healed. And we are relearning how to do that. Thank you so much, Chris Jarman, our Director of Lifespan Faith and Development, who was new to us this year and got here and after watching for a little while said to me, I think maybe the biggest faith development need that you have is for people to remember how much they enjoy being together. And so she has been planning out things like our game nights, stuff like that. This church, I will say this, I think that you can get healing in most Unitarian Universalist churches. I am biased, however, and this church, when it comes to love, and this is why, yes, I am worried about us individually for the wounds that we are carrying still around the pandemic, but I also am 100% confident that we're going to be fine and we are going to help heal each other. Now, some of you know this story, some of you were here for this story, but we have some new people who were not here roughly 9 years ago. So I got to tell y'all a story about this congregation because this energy is part of their DNA. So this church went looking for a minister. I went looking for a church. We both swiped right, and it is right? Someone. We went through the UUA. We went through the UUA process, and the search committee brought me here in May of 2014 for 10 days of what is called trial by potluck for us to get to know each other as best as we could to see if this was going to be a good match. And I will say, man, everyone, like one person who is no longer with us, she was a member of the wisdom circle, the older members, she brought like 3 pages of questions to a meeting. And I assure you, none of them were easy questions. Like, we were working hard at this. And then the last Sunday that I was here came. I was to do the service, and then I would leave. I drove over to that Walgreens, over CVS over there, so that they could have a vote. But before that happened, in the worship service, I had one more thing I needed to know about them. And so it was kind of a test. In the worship service, where I was also talking about love, I said, turn to someone next to you, turn to a person next to you, and say, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Considering I had only known them for like 9-10 days at that point, nervy thing to do, right? They did not turn to a person and say it. They were making whole 360 circles, saying it to everyone around them. They were leaning over like multiple rows to say it to other people. People were calling it from this end over to this end. And I said to myself, okay, they still get to vote on me, but I've voted on them. And that is who this congregation still is. So if you feel so moved, would you say these words with me? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So may it be. And I invite you now to join me in a time of reflection in word and in silence. Make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Close your eyes if that helps you to go inward. And these words are by the Reverend Sarah Lawal. Spirit of life and love, holy mystery, may we hear the voices of the past mingled with the voices of today, guiding us into the future, into our own becoming, with purpose and principle toward liberation for all people. With love as our common calling, let us hold love at the center. May we continue to cherish the earth with humility and reverence. Holding our place in the interdependent web, let us hold love at the center. May we celebrate all sacred beings, diverse in culture and theology, learning from one another and embracing difference in our search for truth and meaning. Let us hold love at the center. May we keep reaching for belovedness, for diverse multicultural community, for the collective thriving of all people, where all voices are heard. As we work to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression, let us hold love at the center. May we welcome transformation, seeking spiritual growth, adapting to our changing world, evolving in this living tradition, never complete, never perfect. Let us hold love at the center. May we cultivate a spirit of generosity, of gratitude and hope, freely and compassionately sharing our faith, our presence, our resources, centering connection and relationships of mutuality. Let us hold love at the center. May we always declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent worth and dignity. May we recommit to one another with our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Let us hold love at the center. Let us keep love at the center, now and always. And let's hold that for a moment in stillness. Amen and blessed be.
We are the tradition of the Free Church. Our church and our community outreach are supported not from an outside source, but from within. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. We share what is offered every week with an organization that upholds our Unitarian Universalist value. This month, we are helping to empower the dream of TXUJM, or the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, TXUJM. It's a statewide justice ministry that raises the voice of UU values, seeking to promote those values in the public square and in enacting legislation and public policy. Live Oak is a member which involves 2 Live Oak representatives attending a monthly advisory council. They're active and they are busy. One of the focuses in 2022 was getting out the vote, texting and writing postcards. Other issues at the forefront are reproductive rights, trans inclusion, LGBTQIA rights, and racial justice, all part of living our UU principles. They cannot do this work without your support, so give generously today. May an offering be received in gratitude and love.
Good morning. I'm Chris Jarman. I serve as your Director of Lifespan Faith Development, and I'd like to welcome you to the Faith Development Hour Plus this week, and I have graphics to help this week. Yeah, last week was a challenge. So we have a lot of different things going on. The main difference is going to be how we sign in our kids today. So I would like to first say that we have the final episode of Voices of a Movement today at 11:05 in room 105 with Tim and Sue Buckley. Even if you haven't participated in any of them, this will be a very meaningful episode as Tim and Sue share about their their civil rights mentor, their hero, and their personal experiences of Selma and having returned to Selma. So we invite you to join them in room 105. We also have parents and caregivers as sexuality educators in room 205 today. This is a small group ministry for our parents whose children are in the OWL program. Your children don't have to be in OWL to take it, but we encourage all our parents whose kids are to be there. That will start immediately after the service, but here's the difference. You're going to go out into the fellowship hall and you're going to sign your kids in at a table that I have set up so that you can go immediately to your class, and I have facilitators there for each of the classes for your children for you to leave them with. So you will leave your kids, you'll sign them in with us, you'll go to class, you'll either go to Voices, you'll go to parents as sexuality educators, or maybe you'll have fellowship time. Your children will go upstairs for K2 AL, 4th through 6th AL, and our regular faith development classes. I've had some folks who had to call out because they were ill, so we're going to do a one-room schoolhouse in the library, and that will be children and youth, and we will still sign in out in the fellowship hall. And I want to give a special reminder that we have trans inclusion as a congregation coming up beginning February the 18th with our intern minister, Carrie, and I do believe seminarian Heather M., until I actually hear her name for the first time, and myself. And that's going to be offered on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We'll have childcare on Saturdays so that we can include as many members of the congregation as possible. So I will be in the fellowship hall if you have questions. Thank you. And we hope that you enjoy your Faith Development Hour.
And now, would you please rise as you are willing and able for our closing hymn, What Wondrous Love. As Hosea Ballou wrote, God's moral love, however we understand God or the force in the universe, the moral law is love. Love is the life and happiness of the soul, and hatred is its death and its misery. And this is why I think that we have to resist the urge to hate as hard as we can, because first and foremost, it damages us. It damages who we are and the people that we want to be. But love heals us, and love strengthens our soul. And so you knew I was going to do it. Would you turn to someone near you and say, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it? I love you and there's nothing you can do about it.
I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. We're not completely done, though. Let us say these words to each other. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to care for the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth. And now, as we depart, we extend and receive the gift of hospitality by taking the first 5 minutes to talk to someone whom you don't know well yet. May we all know the blessings of friendship and community. Now you can go.